Hello and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where we have reached telenovela levels of box office drama. The Flash has the second weekend drop on par with Morbius. Just when it seemed that things couldn't get any worse for DC, it finds a new rock bottom. Woo! Animation continues to dominate this year, including a second weekend hold for Elemental, which allows Pixar to not be totally humiliated. They're still pretty humiliated, but at least not totally. And what do you know, Jennifer Lawrence is still a movie star. Good for her. And depending on your perspective, white people either rescued two movies this weekend or two movies lost out on even bigger box office thanks to little or no diversity. Oh, as I said, plenty of drama. Let's discuss. But before we get into the details, I have some overall thoughts, and I'm curious, of course, as always, to hear yours. So I still think that an overcrowded slate with almost all hugely expensive blockbusters is hurting the box office, along with streaming changing the way people watch content from strong competition. Like, how much damage did Extraction 2 do last weekend? And how about The Bear this weekend? Hulu decided to do a binge, and I think that worked out really well for them instead of dropping the show week to week. The Bear was so freaking good. I watched it in a day. I love those. Most of the episodes are about 30 minutes. There's one like 40 or an hour minute one, which is like a guest star bonanza, but it's really an incredible show. It was so good. So freaking good. And then also audiences have become more patient and willing to wait to watch movies on digital or even on streaming months later, where it's cheaper, more convenient, and often a better experience. I've had a couple of times recently where I have gone to the theaters to support theaters. And sometimes it's not been great. And I've been like, boy, I would be having such a much better time if I were watching this at home. So theaters still have a lot of work to do, I think, in improving the theatrical experience. I mean, I know a lot of people who are super excited to watch Elemental when it hits Disney Plus. I think people are just chomping at the bit for that, but they want to watch it on Disney Plus. Not even digital. They want it at no extra cost, and then it's going to be a delight. That makes the real winner this weekend. J-Law fans rejoice. No Hard Feelings. Made for just $45 million. I wonder how much of that is her salary. In a sea of $100 to $200 million films. And the kind of counter-programming that Hollywood used to thrive on. This is the way that you do it. Asteroid City is, Universal has kind of been doing this. Sony has their own kind of like B movie. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this stream. But Asteroid City is also kind of in the same category, made for just $25 million. Whew, those paper cutouts are cheap for Wes Anderson. And I would probably be getting even more flowers if it were actually a good movie. I'm sure there'll be some Asteroid City apologists down below, but for the most part, these scores ain't good. But both films, by the way, left a lot of money on the table due to lack of diversity. Look at these demographic breakdowns. No Hard Feelings with a 54% white audience, and Asteroid City at 62%. Jeffrey Wright did nothing to help that movie out. I said, these are mayonnaise movies, man, up there with, A Man Called Otto and Mary Poppins Returns. These days, if a movie's really cooking, that means it has an audience that's evenly split, pretty much in thirds, amongst white, Hispanic, and black moviegoers. But you never want to see your white percentage go above 45%. That means that you've crossed over from having broad appeal to really only targeting a certain audience. And, it would be for any demographic. But, I think it's very interesting. Some of you don't care for the demographic breakdowns, but hey, the name of the game is mobilizing all the categories, and we're playing the game. All right, however, both these films will likely be bangers on digital too. Oh, I think they will. Did you see No Hard Feelings or Asteroid City in theaters this weekend? If not, do you plan to see either down the line on digital or streaming? And by the way, No Hard Feelings will eventually hit Netflix because it's a Sony movie, and it will be like an explosion there. I think that movie will do so incredibly well on Netflix. But if you plan to never watch either movie, and really, are you not going to turn one of those on when it comes to no extra cost? I think you will. But if you are avoiding them on purpose, why? Be very curious to hear that. I think it's perfectly understandable that, different demographics of all kinds, ethnicity, gender, want to see themselves represented in movies, unless, of course, it's like a historical film or something like that, where, you have a certain cast to reflect the situation that's being told. But, I think that makes sense. It's all thanks to Exodus, which was really, the thing that broke this. And it's all been, how far we've come since Exodus, I think is quite interesting. All right, now let's dive into the details on these movies, on these mofos. All right, so Spider-Verse and Elemental were in a photo finish for number one. Oh, it would have been beautiful if Elemental had been number one. But I'm very happy for Spider-Verse. I mean, wow. And one has to wonder, by the way, if Spider-Verse getting slightly more premium screens this weekend is what allowed it to edge out Elemental. Was it that extra 1 or 2 Dolby showtimes? Could have been, because these are so close. Spider-Verse and Elemental, by the way, drank the Flash's milkshake on premium screens, particularly Dolby, thanks to the latter tanking. If they don't build more premium screens for next summer, the movie business is just stupid, because that's so clearly what needs to be done. Both Spider-Verse and Elemental had shockingly good Super Mario Brothers level holds this weekend. Wow! Once again proving that adult audiences in the West are finally getting into animation, which is exciting stuff. Oh, I'm excited. But this also means that parents need to start realizing that just because something's animated doesn't mean it's for general audiences. For so long in the West, you saw animation and you were like, babysitting content. Nope. You got to be responsible and check it out just like you would any movie. All right, and I also think, as I've said before, I think the lack of live action on-screen talent that annoys and keeps away some moviegoers is also a factor. Because Hollywood's become, increasingly political, as there are a number of people in that Hollywood space. And so some people are like, well, I don't care how good the movie looks, I'm not watching that person. But with animation, you're like, I love this. I turn my brain off as to who's who. All right, but while Spider-Verse is a true Hollywood success story, which is so great considering how much the first movie did not do well. And some of you are like, yes, it did. No, it didn't. It was a colossal box office failure, but it won an Oscar, and then it did incredibly well on Netflix, where it built up a huge audience. It's the Austin Powers effect. That happened to Austin Powers as well. But now, it's a juggernaut. I'm still happy for it. Couldn't have happened to a nicer movie or a bunch of folks. Although, of course, it had that scandal over the weekend with how it treated its animators. Oh, that was rough. That was rough. Vulture has really found a niche. They're really digging in to the treatment of Hollywood people. That's a complex conversation that maybe we'll have at some point. Oh, a lot of scary stuff. Good luck, Amy Pascal and Phil Lord. All right, so anyway, there is no saving Elemental's theatrical performance. The strong audience scores and this weekend's hold are really just about indicating that the film will hopefully do well on digital and later on Disney+. That's kind of what we're looking at here. I think what's become crystal clear is the Pixar brand has been damaged, and don't just blame putting the movies on Disney+. A lot of recent Pixar content has not been A++, which is how they made a name for themselves in the first place. And then, I've enjoyed the movies, but they're not A++. Disney, and is Elemental, I don't say even that Elemental is A++. As I said in my review, I'd say it's up there with Coco and Onward. But I think it's better than a lot of the recent content that Pixar has put out. Disney's brand is, of course, heavily damaged, and it's affecting every single vertical. Wait till we talk about release dates in a moment. The movie was clearly poorly advertised. When I started Elemental, I was like, oh wow, this movie is nothing like advertised. It was very poorly advertised. And also the movie's very poorly positioned on the release schedule. Oh, get ready for more drama. This is a good one. On this last one, Pixar movies usually release in June, in mid to late June. That's their spot. They always release. If they're going to release a Pixar movie in the summer, that's what they get. Just like Disney Animation has locked down Thanksgiving. Marvel always kicks off the summer with the first weekend in May. And Star Wars has become a Christmas franchise alternating with Avatar, right? But the other studios, now that the release schedule has become so crowded, it's making everyone desperate. And also the studios smell blood in the water from Disney's intense image and political problems. So Disney's hard and fast release date traditions are now not only being challenged, but they're being challenged effectively. Ooh, oh, that's amazing. That is a huge deal. We'll see what happens with Wish for this Thanksgiving, which has a lot of challengers coming out earlier in the month. And Universal is feeling pretty slick with Super Mario Brothers doing so well. And the dailies for Wicked must look fantastic. I don't know what they're looking at. So far, it only looks medium to me. I mean, I think the production design looks amazing, but is it another like Oz, that Sam Raimi Disney movie? We'll see. I think the jury's still out on whether or not Ariana Grande can act, quite frankly. And then I also think Cynthia Erivo, they're not considering the horrible social media issues that she has with the Black community. I don't know if they're going to be able to get past that, to be honest with you. We'll see. But Universal feels so bullish about it that they've moved the release date from Christmas 2025 for part 2 to Thanksgiving 2025, booking it directly against whatever animated Disney movie is set to open that weekend. Disney has the spot booked, but they don't have a movie title just yet. But that is extremely aggressive on the part of Universal. Wow, Universal in particular is challenging Disney almost in every category, from animation to live action adaptations with their DreamWorks How to Train Your Dragon live action movie coming up, to of course theme parks. And Universal's doing really well. They're the winner at the box office this year so far. So we'll see what happens, but that's amazing. Now, as for The Flash, from the new Dark Knight to the new Morbius, this one hurts. Although some people think it feels so good, because a lot of people were rooting for not only just this movie, but DC to fail. But I think they never expected it to fail at this capacity. Wow. Almost all its Dolby showtimes were lost, and Fandango was offering 2-for-1 tickets for only the second weekend for the film. Yikes, as I tweeted. And not only is Warner Brothers Discovery going to lose a ton of money on The Flash just because it was so expensive and because of the ad campaign, the little one that they did run, but they've compounded the problem in ways that there was no need to do so, because Warner Brothers is just going to keep on Warner Brothering, even under new management, it seems. Zazie and James Gunn, they did not need to back a movie that neither one had anything to do with. It was hubris. They felt that they could save it by saying it was such a good film. But why did they take responsibility for Walter Hamada's opus? Like, let it just be the death of the old regime. And if it by some chance it was successful, then you go and run in and take credit. Don't they know how Hollywood works? Then, while they thankfully remain non-committal on the future of Ezra Miller in DC, why did they double down on Andy Muschietti at the last minute, no less? And they didn't even get any headlines out of it. As I said when I covered it, why not they did not just a multi-picture deal for Andy Muschietti, but they also officially made him the director and his sister the producer of Batman Brave and the Bold. I mean, now that seems like the dumbest idea ever. And how could they possibly walk it back without dinging Batman Brave and the Bold when it's still just a glimmer in James Gunn's eye? I mean, that is just so bad. And now James Gunn, by the way, looks like maybe he doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to DC, just as he preps Superman Legacy. And on that note, is David Corenswet going up against another group that's like a knockoff Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn's Suicide Squad, according to the latest rumors about Superman Legacy, Superman versus the Authority. Is that really going to jumpstart DC after the shocking debacle that is The Flash? I don't think so. As I said, it's going to start to look like the most expensive CW episode ever made. Also, after he already knocked off Guardians of the Galaxy with the Suicide Squad, why would he do it a third time? I hope that turns out not to be the case. At this point, moviegoers are screaming at Warner Brothers Discovery that they do not like what they're doing with the DC brand. And before you say they should go back to the Snyderverse, there wasn't anybody watching that either. I mean, it's sad but true. Batman v Superman deeply divided audiences, which is what started this mess. And Zack Snyder's Justice League was unable to deliver strong viewership numbers for HBO Max, unfortunately. So take a break. That's the only thing to do. The studio should go after other exciting new IP like Barbie, which is looking to be Warner Brothers Discovery's true hit of the summer. Although that's not even guaranteed. Let's see, it's a rough summer at the box office. And then we'll see if James Gunn can pull DC out of the nosedive, or if he'll go down with the ship. But based on his pitch so far, I continue to think that it's full of too many deep cuts, and now I feel that way more than ever after seeing what happened to The Flash. And it's doomed as a soft reboot, which I've been saying since day one of the Gunn-Safran regime is a huge mistake. But I guess we'll see again, because at this point, James Gunn has no choice but to just plow ahead. He's got nothing else. This is it. He's going to have to do it. He's really become maybe the Ahab of DC. All right, but good news for Jennifer Lawrence. She can still sell tickets, and that is no small feat these days. No Hard Feelings did slightly better than expected, going up against some very big and expensive competition. And interestingly, despite the subject matter, the movie skewed slightly female. That should give Jennifer Lawrence a good indication of what her and her team should look for as her next project. I'm thinking something like a Julia Roberts or Sandra Bullock mid-career film. We're talking Erin Brockovich, The Blind Side, or Gravity. Also, comedy. Bullock in particular found a lot of luck there, and it seems this could be a good path forward for Lawrence as well based on the success and response to this film. She already has an Oscar at this point. She doesn't need to try and work for one. Now she just needs to build back up her box office. She said she'd do another Hunger Games, but I gotta tell you, I don't think that's it. I think building herself into another Julia Roberts or Sandra Bullock is definitely the way to go. And that would be a very impressive feat. And again, No Hard Feelings is so far a nice little success story in theaters, but it will likely really blow up on digital and then down the line on Netflix. Oh, it's going to be huge there. We'll see if Sony follows Universal's 17-day window plan, which is making Universal big bucks. In fact, they just released, as we talked about on the live stream last week, they just released the news that over the last 3 years, they've made $1 billion with their new digital strategy. $1 billion with a B! And they're still winning at the theatrical box office. My goodness. I would definitely, if I were Sony, put No Hard Feelings on digital in just 17 days. For sure. Same for Asteroid City. I wouldn't keep that in theaters very long. I mean, I think it has its headlines for award season. But again, the scores, critic, audience are so low, it's just nice that it's making some money. The box office is good enough, though, that Wes Anderson will live to make another movie. But what's going to get him out of his slump? I think his best movie is arguably The Grand Budapest Hotel, but he hasn't made a good movie since. And I think very few of you can argue that he has. Right? All right, as for the rest of the top 10, although I'm sure some of you will try. As for the rest of the top 10, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts is more of a Band-Aid on that franchise than a home run. They'll make another film here as well, but they still haven't totally fixed the franchise. Also, it was way too close to Spider-Verse. Spider-Verse really drank the milkshake for Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, and I'd argue The Little Mermaid as well, although The Little Mermaid had other issues, obviously. Guardians of the Galaxy continues to chug along nicely and has actually become a genuine hit for Marvel, not to mention a badly needed one. So at least James Gunn has that going for him. Then, unfortunately, The Blackening is not going to be a horror hit. We've seen a couple horror movies be breakout hits over the past year or so. Not going to happen for The Blackening. It did okay, though, and again might find an audience later on digital and streaming. Similar to No Hard Feelings and Asteroid City, it seems to have not cast a wide enough net of appeal. But, again, that was part of the gag. But then on that argument, perhaps all audiences are a little tired of political and societal commentary. There's enough of that on social media. You don't need to go to the movies to see that, it seems. Also, maybe if The Blackening had gotten some bigger name talent, I think that might have helped. So why do you think The Blackening didn't do better theatrically? I thought the trailers were very funny. And now let's head over to streaming, where, starting with Nielsen for the end of May, Arnold Schwarzenegger seems to have finally, he's been trying for so long, staged a comeback. I mean, he hasn't had a genuine hit since True Lies in 1994, which, by the way, is for some reason very hard to find anywhere to watch. And I know he was governor in the interim and stuff like that, but he's been working on and off since then, and he just hasn't been able to get his career back on track. But he did it. He never gave up, and he did it. FUBAR is not only number one, but a strong number one. And also, good thing CBS decided to uncancel SWAT, because look at it go across 3 platforms. And maybe that success is partially due to the publicity for, the cast being upset that it had been canceled. But who cares? Viewership is viewership, and SWAT is doing well. Ted Lasso also continues to hold strong towards the end of its 3rd season. Things seem to have finally clicked for this season. While Succession, with its series finale, finally popped into the overall top 10, giving Max a nice little victory the week of its debut. This was the first week for Max, switching over from HBO Max. Now, while Mrs. Maisels also had a series finale, couldn't get into the overall top 10 like Succession, it did place 4th on the originals list, so that's great. And Citadel, with its own season finale, just managed to crack the OG top 10, but with a very small number. I'm surprised. I think that show has not done well. And Storm Reed is also building a slow and steady career. Missing is the #1 movie of the week from Sony, now on Netflix, because Sony, of course, again, doesn't have a streaming service. And with talk of her as well about maybe getting an Emmy nomination for The Last of Us. That would be wonderful. The reason people are talking about it is that the voting for the Emmy nominations ends tomorrow, and the nominations will be announced on July 12th, which we'll certainly discuss. The Mother is still doing very well, as you can see, while a lot of recent theatrical releases are starting to show up on these charts as well, with moviegoers now willing to wait not just for digital, but even longer for streaming, where they get to again watch the movie at no extra cost. And there's Max again with Shazam 2, the debut week. They debuted Max with, Shazam 2, everybody. But there weren't too many takers. As you can see, that's a pretty small number. On Netflix's charts for just this past week, look at Extraction 2 go! Also, you'll notice this chart looks a little bit different because Netflix has changed their metrics, which counts views now instead of minutes with hours divided by runtime. So that's why all of that is listed here. When it comes to hours viewed, Extraction 2 just edged out the debut of The Mother from just a few weeks ago. And The Mother is still even in the top 10 6 weeks out. And then Extraction, the first one, also got into the top 10, second place no less. So as you can see, this type of movie does very well for Netflix, which is why Gal Gadot is up next in August with A Heart of Stone. Although I have to tell you, Extraction 2, I felt was truly something special. Fantastic. As for shows, Never Have I Ever rose to first place after debuting in second place just past week, just barely edging out Black Mirror Season 6. I gotta say, it's kind of not great that Black Mirror couldn't debut at #1 and was beaten out by a show in its second week. It seems the Black Mirror might have lost a little of its luster. I've watched 2 episodes. I watched Beyond the Sea and Joan is Awful. And I gotta say, I thought they were a little off. I don't think they were nearly as good as Season 5 and was USS Callister Season 5, but I think not quite as good. And also, I think there's more shows kind of doing a similar thing at this point. But anyway, Never Have I Ever did manage to pull its first and third seasons into the top 10 as well, so it's going out on a very nice note. Here you can see that Arnold is still doing very well with Fubar and his documentary, a couple of weeks out. They just hit Nielsen, but here you can see them more recently. But Amy Schumer failed to draw an audience with her new stand-up special. She might have finally run out of gas. Then on iTunes, it's the usual suspects over here, although not one of the new releases this week was able to crack the top 10, although there weren't really any big ones. Hopefully, it's a good sign for Dial of Destiny that the Indy 4-pack is doing so well. Indiana Jones movies are also now available on Disney+. And I'm thrilled to see Blackberry pop back into the top 10 after falling out last week because the price just dropped now. It's available for a $7 rental, which I think is, again, why it popped back into the top 10. Check that out. Such a good movie. And Shailene Woodley, remember her? She's also trying to stage a comeback, but isn't having quite the same luck as Jennifer Lawrence. She's also in that new upcoming GameStop stock movie, Dumb Money. But at least her movie here is in the top 10. She's got that going for her. As for this coming week, yes, Indiana Jones, which has had a rough ride since its debut at Cannes, will finally hit theaters. Studios need to stop these long, drawn-out PR campaigns. They did it for The Flash. They did it for Indiana Jones, where the movie therefore seems stale by the time general audiences can finally see it. I think they never should have debuted Indiana Jones at Cannes. And reviews came out that long ago. I'll be seeing it this week and reviewing it this week. I think it's just a mess. While Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken from Universal and DreamWorks, Universal is back, baby. It's not going to be another Super Mario Brothers. But still, many anti-Disney fans have been touting it as the anti-Little Mermaid movie, which is mean, but they're doing it. So we'll see if the anti-Disney folks actually buy tickets to the movie. We'll see what its box office looks like. And remember, with the 4th of July on a Tuesday this year, these movies are all hoping to play not just for the weekend, but throughout the coming week because it's basically a holiday here in North America. And streaming wants a piece of this holiday action too. With movies on Wednesday, the Rock Hudson documentary hits Max. I'm a huge Rock Hudson fan. I love his movies. They're so good. You should definitely, Giant is one of my favorite. He also does some great movies with Doris Day. And also, the director who did, he's a German director who did All That Heaven Allows with him and something else. Imitation of Life. I can't believe I'm forgetting the director's name. I love that director so much, but made some great movies with Rock Hudson, who also was closeted and then was, I think, the first major celebrity to die of AIDS. So fabulous documentary. I'm glad they're putting a spotlight on his fascinating and tragic story. So I think that's worth checking out on Max if you aren't already familiar with that story. While on Friday, Nimona hits Netflix. This is that LGBT animated movie based on a comic, a graphic novel, that Blue Sky was working on, but Disney dropped it when they acquired Blue Sky via the Fox deal. So Netflix picked it up, and I will be reviewing that this week as well. Then with series, on Wednesday, Apple TV drops the first 2 episodes of Hijack with Idris Elba getting his own action show after showing up a little bit in Extraction 2. Then on Thursday, The Witcher Season 3 Part 1 hits Netflix. Will anyone still care after the disastrous Season 2 and Henry Cavill already making it known that he's not returning for Season 4? Warrior season, speaking of Hemsworths, it'll be Liam. What? That's ridiculous. But anyway, Warrior Season 3 drops its first 2 episodes, now airing on Max. And Max also has Season 2 of 10-Year-Old Tom, which somebody must watch because it has a Season 2. Then on Friday, Is It Cake is back on Netflix, which turned out to be a big hit when it comes to reality television. And then, just in time for the 4th of July, you've got the patriotic final season of Jack Ryan with John Krasinski saying, "I'm out of here." But he was gracious enough and got paid to do one more round for Prime Video, which has done quite well with these kinds of slightly conservative shows. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your thoughts on all the box office drama? Share them down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.